Welcome to an emergency all-star edition of the Dairy Brothers Tribecast, brought to you by waitingfornextyear.com and our friends at the Center for Advanced Dentistry. I am Todd Dairy. My brother Matt Dairy is unavailable to do this one, and there was so much content that I felt like it was the maiden voyage to do it on my own. So here we are. Lots to discuss. Just after the All-Star game here in Cleveland, it was a fantastic week that really showcased what our city has to offer. It really got a great look nationally, so I definitely want to discuss that. Want to discuss Frankie Lindor, our guy, Frankie Lindor, and the future and what this All-Star week did for him. Obviously, what happened last night in the game and in the home run derby. I want to talk about all that and much, much more. But to start off, I really just wanted to go over everything that happened last night at the All-Star game, Tuesday night, if you were listening to this on another day. I'm recording this Wednesday afternoon, but it really was an unbelievable showcase. I did not go to the game. I, as many of you know, am a season ticket holder. MLB sets the prices for these tickets, and when my tickets were offered to me to pay essentially $550 a ticket, was a little rich for my blood, and I am in a group, and I take half of the season, and I have 4 other people that take 10 each, and I offered the tickets up to them, and they took them, so I'm glad they got to experience that, and so great for them. Executive producer Jeremy was there last night on location, had some reports from him, and from all accounts, Cleveland really showed well. Last Tuesday night's All-Star game, obviously featuring 4 Cleveland Indian All-Stars, highlighted by starting first baseman Carlos Santana, and then Frankie Lindor and Brad Hand and Shane Bieber as the other 3 All-Stars. There were so many cool moments and so much that I was so impressed by. I really just was blown away by it. And originally, I went in 1981 with my parents and my brother at the old stadium. During the strike of 1981, I was there at the All-Star game in 1997. I also attended the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game. So I just felt as though, this is something that I'll be okay missing out on. And for those prices, it's a little much for me. But staying home last night and watching it on television, I really feel as though I missed out on something. It was so well done. The broadcast was good. I know a lot of people complain about Joe Buck. I thought the broadcast was great and how it went. I love the players being mic'd up. I really was impressed by how Fox was able to get that all done and really how they showcased the city. But really, if you're going to talk about last night's All-Star game, there's 2 places to start. First, we'll go with Francisco Lindor. Our guy, Frankie, our All-Star. I can't say enough about how he has embraced this city and how this city has embraced him. And what I saw, whether it be on the red carpet with his unbelievable outfit, his I guess you could call it a checkerboard jacket of look like some blue and some black, and with a lot of bling on there, and he just looked fantastic. His entire ensemble was unbelievable. I watched a lot of MLB Network to get their coverage in the afternoon of the red carpet, and I think they did a nice job. I mean, Harold Reynolds, the guy's, if I never see Harold Reynolds on television again, it'll be too soon. He's terrible. Greg Ansinger did a nice job, and then I caught a little bit of intentional talk with Cleveland's own Chris Rose and Kevin Millar, also known as Yuck It Up Inside Joke Fest, for an hour. But it was still good to see, all the All-Star stuff, obviously. But Frankie's personality was on full display. We know it and we love it here in Cleveland. But I don't think the public, the national public at large, knows him to the level that obviously we do. And, I know he's one of the faces of baseball. If Mike Trout is the guy who is clearly the overall best player. If you had to say the best player with the best personality and the most marketable, I'd still say it's Frankie. The way he came off, every time he comes up, whether it's a commercial or an interview, I'm not going to say he knows how to play the game because that's the wrong way of putting it in terms of with the media, but he is the genuine article. He is such a cool cat. The love that he has for the sport, and I believe he really feels this. I'm so blessed to be a part of a major league sport and be as good as I am, and he's so humble. He's such an impressive young guy, and this all comes around with all of this. Where I'm going, this all comes around to the bigger conversation. Frankie said many, many times over these past few days, "This is my city. Welcome to my city," he says to Joe Buck. He said it a million times. And I truly believe that he believes that it is his city. And it is. I mean, Baker Mayfield, it's also his city, and LeBron before everybody, but obviously before LeBron left, but this is Frankie's town. And this inevitably comes to the conversation of Frankie's going to be a free agent in a couple of years, and what is the organization going to do about it? I know the infamous Paul Dolan line, "Enjoy him," the throwaway quote, "Enjoy him." Everybody can't stand it. I thought it was obviously terrible optics at the time, and he tried to walk it back as best he could. But inevitably, all of this talk of my city and Frankie Lindor is going to come back to the fact that he is a free agent in a couple of years. And what is the organization going to do to keep him? Because I just don't see any sort of path for him to re-sign here. But I also don't see any sort of path where if the Indians let him walk or trade him with a year left or with a year and a half left, it's not going to have a crazy reverberating effect throughout the organization, throughout the fan base that could irreparably damage them. Paul Dolan is in a damned if you do, damned if you don't spot with Frankie Lindor here. If you do pony up and you figure out a way, whether it's you're bringing on another investor like John Sherman a couple years ago, or you do a lifetime sort of contract, throw the old Bobby Bonilla situation, which is, the greatest contract ever signed of the 25 years of $1 million for every in July for every 25 years. If people don't know it, Google it. It's one of the great deals of all time for any player in any sport. Genius of Bobby Bonilla and his agents to still continue to collect from the Mets $1 million every single year as an annuity. It's pretty impressive. But whatever way the Indians have to get it done, they really, really have to get it done. I think leave. We've seen them all leave. We saw Manny Ramirez hit his home run on his last at bat and then bolt. We saw CC Sabathia have to get traded in 2008 because it was inevitable that he was going to walk. We saw Jim Thome walk. We saw the Kenny Lofton leave and then come back and then leave again. All during the 90s, all these guys, other than Omar Vizquel for the most part, were on their way out. We saw Cliff Lee get traded. That was another one. We saw Victor Martinez get traded. I could go on, and it's just kind of the way small market baseball is. But with that said, I think all of those were devastating, obviously, but nothing will be as devastating to an organization as Frankie Lindor leaving the Indians. I was always of the opinion that, okay, listen, this is inevitable. We're going to have to trade him at some point and reload. I just don't think that it's such a tough call. I just don't see if he does walk. I just think that the fan base is going to revolt. Like the Cliff Lee revolt was pretty bad just because of the timing of it, and it was after CC was traded a year before. But I think this will be a revolt like no other. I think the Indians will take a massive, massive PR hit. No matter what they do, it will be wrong. The Dolans already have that stigma attached to them, the old hashtag Dolan's cheap. But in reality, it's going to be it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If they do somehow figure out a way to re-sign Frankie and pony up and figure it out, and he says fine, and they end up giving him an average annual value of $30+ million, you really are looking at a roster that's going to have to be really scaled down just to fit him. If you look at today's roster, for example, the guy who's making the most money is Carlos Santana, right? So if you basically took this roster today and you took Carlos Santana off of it and you essentially replaced him with a rookie like a Bobby Bradley, and you took off Trevor Bauer and you replaced him with Aaron Savali, and you took off Corey Kluber and you replaced him with, whoever it might be, Zach Plesac. I mean, I know Kluber's hurt, but for argument's sake, let's say all these guys are in their prime, but you kept all the rest of them. You're still looking at a same type of payroll that they've been trying to pare down. And then you have a Frankie Lindor making $30+ million. The Dolans are going to have to commit to a higher payroll than they want to, just to keep Frankie around, obviously, and still have to play a lot of the young kids. Now, the organization, their best prospects are all in the lower levels at this point, position player prospects. So it might be something that they are going to try to figure out, and they'll have to live with having a top-heavy guy. Maybe they look into the Nolan Joneses and guys of that ilk to be playing sooner rather than later. But in a couple of years also, you're going to have Shane Bieber making more money and becoming arbitration eligible eventually. You're going to have Mike Clevenger getting to those levels too. So there's a lot of moving parts there to make Frankie stay, but it really comes down to the fact that they're going to have to commit. And if they don't, and Frankie does end up walking, and the union and his reps are all over him about taking the most money and leaving his quote-unquote his city, then it's really going to be obviously a sad day for the city of Cleveland, but I think it's got reverberations throughout this organization that will rock it to its core, and it could really, really set this franchise back in a major, major way. So listen, as the great Paul Dolan once said, let's enjoy it while we have him. But in all seriousness, Frankie was fantastic, great ambassador for the city this week. I thought he was, personality plus. Loved his outfit on the red carpet. Loved him being mic'd up with Joe Buck. Joe Buck was meh on that conversation, but he really did a great job, Frankie. We were so proud of him. Then you had Carlos Santana, another great ambassador this week. Thrilled to be there. Thrilled to be the starting first baseman and in the home run derby. It was a shame that Pete Alonso caught that hot streak at the end of the first round of the home run derby and beat him by one. Carlos isn't a home run derby kind of power hitter. I think he just did it, obviously, because it's his hometown. And, unfortunately, it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. He went 0 for 3 at the plate, but the ovations he got were fantastic. And ironically, he was robbed in his third at bat on a great scoop by Max Muncy, on a great scoop by Alonso at first base, keeping his foot. So Alonso was on him all weekend. But kudos to Carlos Santana and Frankie, obviously. And then the big story last night, well, one of the big stories in the All-Star game Tuesday night, was our very own Shane Bieber, who, if you could have bet odds on who would win the All-Star game MVP, I think you could probably have gotten 8 million to 1, as our friend Cleve TA would say, for him to win the MVP on those odds in Vegas. Came in, struck out the side, and looked dominant doing so. The crowd, and I don't want to talk about the crowd, but the crowd was so awesome and so behind him. The Let's Go Bieber chants that were going on, it was really like executive producer Jeremy, as he told me last night and texted me from the game, said, it's like a playoff atmosphere in here. Bieber looked like a kid in a candy store. Talk to anybody who's talked to him. He's one of the most humble, hardworking, just a great all-around kid. And if you know his story, he's obviously came from couldn't get a D1 scholarship, was a walk-on, made himself a great college pitcher by hard work. Was a draft pick of the Indians in that great draft 3 years ago that produced him, Zach Plesac, and Aaron Savali, and was a last-minute Friday addition to the All-Star game, taking Mike Minor's spot, and ends up striking out the side, pitching the fifth inning, and winning All-Star game MVP. Now, I'm going to keep all positive here. Obviously, if this game is not in Cleveland, he's probably not winning that All-Star game. But the moment was so fantastic, and he was so blown away by it. I loved his reaction and his interview after the game on the field. It was just completely surreal. You could tell. I mean, I had goosebumps for the kid. I wasn't even there. I just was so happy for him. And what a terrific kid. Indians have him, for years and years to come. And this was a guy who wasn't on the roster 13 months ago. Most Indians fans didn't even know about 13 months ago. And a rapid rise to the majors. Started out this season as the Indians' fifth starter. And fast forward to July, and he is the All-Star Game MVP. So, hats off to my man, Shane Bieber. I absolutely loved it. So thrilled for him. And you just got to love it. You got to love the fact that you got another rising star pitcher who now will become a household name, hopefully. So, and then the last All-Star, and this will spawn another conversation, but the last All-Star I wanted to talk about, obviously, I haven't touched on, is Brad Hand. Tribe closer Brad Hand, who was completely untouchable for most of the season, entered the game last night. Alex Cora, the manager of the Boston Red Sox in the American League, had said earlier in the day that the way he was going to set things up with a lead was eighth inning he was going to go to Hand and then let wife beater extraordinaire Aroldis Chapman close it out in the ninth. So Indians get a lead, and obviously they turn it over. Or Indians get a lead. The American League gets a lead, and they turn things over to Brad Hand with a 4-1 lead in the eighth inning. Hand ended up allowing, he walked a couple guys, allowed 2 hits and 2 earned runs. One of those hits, might I add, probably Gleyber Torres should have made the play, and he should have been out of the inning unscathed. But be that as it may, Hand has been awesome all year, completely dominant. And then he had that outing against the Royals on the 25th of June, which broke his, it was the first blown save of the year. He had given up 5 runs on 5 hits, including that grand slam to Tribe killer Hunter Dozier. And since then, he struggled a bit. He saved a game on the 30th against Baltimore where he he loaded the bases before getting out of it. And then he pitched a scoreless inning against the Royals on July 2nd, and then July 3rd again he struggled, put a couple guys on base, and he looked gassed heading into the All-Star break. But still, guy was 23 for 24 in saves and strikes out 53 and 35 in the third innings, which we'll take all day. Last night he threw 32 pitches which was the most pitches he's thrown completely in any game this year, and I want to say it was the most he's thrown in any relief appearance in his career, which I defy you to find me someone who's thrown the most pitches in any outing in an All-Star game for their career. But Hand again looked a little shaky last night. I don't want to worry about it. I know he threw 32 pitches, and we don't play again. The Indians don't play again until this big series against the Twins on Friday. But you'd be a fool to not be a little bit concerned. And you'd also be a fool to think that the Indians are still thinking about dealing him. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's the same thing I'm thinking. I don't want to trade Brad Hand while I am 5.5 games behind the Twins and playing our best baseball of the year. I love the fact that he's under club control for a couple more years. Finding closers. They say John Hart was the old closers grow on trees was his line. We all know how a bad bullpen can derail things. Hand's been so steady since he's come over. But I have said this on previous podcasts, are so talented. But if you're going to do anything, it's going to be with Brad Hand. But if you end up getting a package that is overwhelming, it wouldn't shock me one bit if they did end up trading Brad Hand and trading Trevor Bauer and still going for it and getting major league pieces. I heard some rumblings of some Brad Hand trade speculation that I am not at liberty to share, but it's out there. It's out there more than I thought it was going to be. But the way he's pitched over the last couple weeks has to be a tad bit concerning, and you have to think, if you're the front office, if you can get blown away with a package, you're selling reliever at a peak value. Keep in mind, Brad Hand was DFA'd 2 years ago by the Florida or Miami Marlins. DFA'd. We've seen so many relief pitchers over the years be so great and then fall off very fast. The baseball is littered with guys who were dominant for a year, and then the next year, all of a sudden, they couldn't find it again. So you really, again, the Indians are trying to do something that, our buddy Andre Knott always says, which is the impossible, which is try to rebuild and contend at the same time. If you're going to do that and you're going to get a package for Brad Hand that's going to include, some A prospects, I think that the Indians are really going to strongly consider it. I'm still of the opinion that Trevor Bauer is all but gone. It's not a matter of when or if, it's a matter of when. Aaron Savali was actually put on the injured list in AAA with right shoulder stiffness. Whether that comes into play with keeping Bauer or not, I don't know. But I think you are going to see up until the July 31st, the one trading deadline this year, the July 31st trade deadline, I think you're going to see speculation that Brad Hand, all the way up to the end, that Brad Hand could be dealt. Before I go any further with the podcast, the solo maiden voyage, I just wanted to give a quick plug to our sponsor, the Center for Advanced Dentistry, my main man, Dr. Ben Hornstein. Check them out at cfad.net. He is the best dentist in Northeast Ohio. He's the funniest dentist in Northeast Ohio, and he will put you at ease. He and his staff, they are terrific people. Sandy is one of the hygienists who's been taking care of me since I was like 12. She's fantastic. They do such a good job in there. But if you get a chance, check them out. The Center for Advanced Dentistry, cfad.net, Center for Advanced Dentistry, Dr. Ben Hornstein and his team. Check them out. Back to the pod here. Perhaps while we were talking about the All-Star game and the week itself and what a great job Cleveland did, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the most powerful moment last night, which was the annual Stand Up to Cancer moment where everybody in the crowd holds up a sign and says, "I stand up for," and there is a spot where you write a name. And I lost my father to cancer. My mother is a breast cancer survivor, so it's something that hits close to home for me. The great executive producer, Jeremy, held up a sign for my dad last night, which was, meant more to me than everybody can even know, but and same for my brother. But the moment of the night was the Stand Up to Cancer moment where Brad Hand, Shane Bieber, Carlos Santana, Frankie Lindor, and Tito came out on the field and brought Carlos Carrasco with them, and they all had signs that held up and said, "I stand up for Cookie." And it was an unbelievably powerful moment. I don't know how Carrasco kept it together. I know I got choked up watching it on television, but just what Carrasco means to this organization, the struggles he's been going through, his health scare. I think people forget that the reason why he signed his original contract, not this current extension he signed, was because of his heart scare years ago. And he basically said, "Listen, I'm going to take this money now because I love Cleveland. You never know what's going to happen, and this is more money than I've ever dreamed I could have. So he took it, and I think his recent contract extension that he signed, he felt the same way. Now, this was before, obviously, he was diagnosed with leukemia, but this was really an unbelievable moment for an unbelievable guy, and I know how much it meant to the fans in the stands, and how much it meant to the organization, and how much it meant to Carlos Carrasco. But I really hope that baseball fans throughout the country watching that really took that to heart, and it was a moment that captured everybody's heart, because it was really something. And again, like I said, I got choked up watching it on television. So mad props out to our guy Cookie Carrasco. Hopefully he will get better and beat this. I know he will, and the team continues to play for him. He's their guy. So that was quite a moment last night. And one last thing, and I'm going to end this on a positive note. I really was hoping for a couple of things last night, and I tweeted this last night, and I said that the Indians fans had two jobs. Number one, cheer the F out of everything for all of our all-stars and go crazy for our guys, and Michael Brantley, might I add, and boo the F out of Aroldis Chapman. And literally, our fans did not disappoint. To take it a step further, not only did Aroldis get ridiculously booed, who I can't stand him, screw that guy, can't stand him, but every Cub, Javier Baez, Wilson Contreras, Chris Bryant, loud boos for all of them. And I guess some Yankees got booed as well. I don't hate the Yankees. I don't have a deep hatred for the Yankees. I hate the Cubs. Anybody associated with the 2016 Cubs makes me want to vomit. In fact, I vowed to never walk into Wrigley Field ever again. I can't. Even thinking about it's ridiculous. Oh, and one last thing. I was told that last night in the stadium, they were doing basically like kind of a salute. I don't know if it was a salute to the Indians fans or whatever, but not only did they show Rajai Davis' homer, but they showed the Michael Martinez ground out with a voiceover. I guess it was voiced over by Tom Hamilton, and it said something to the effect of, "We've gone through it all. We've gone through misery together," or something of that effect. Who in the fuck thought that was a good idea to show the last out of the Cubs winning the World Series on the Jumbotron in Progressive Field? Whoever's decision that was should be fired, because that was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard or seen in my life. End of rant. So how was that? That wasn't so bad. Props out to the city of Cleveland, the Indians organization, Frankie Lindor, Brad Hand, MVP Shane Bieber, Carlos Santana, Tito Francona. Props out to the entire organization for an incredible week of showing off our city. Made me proud to be a Clevelander, as I always am, but we really showed off our city well, and it was pretty awesome. So big series coming up this weekend, when we get back in action. Tribe Twins. This is going to be a big one. This could be a make or break. I'm not going to say make or break, but this is going to really kind of, I think, is a big deciding factor on which way the Indians are going to go potentially at the trade deadline, because you sweep the Twins this week and you are right there. You'll be, what would it be? 2.5 out, right? You get swept and you're right back at the bottom again, and feeling like we'll never catch this team. So I think this is a gigantic, decider, because you're 2 weeks before the trade deadline. So let's see what happens this weekend. You got I'm going Friday and Sunday. Friday night, you're going to have Mike Clevenger take the mound for the Tribe against Kyle Gibson, who's been much better of late. And Saturday, Bauer against Jake Odorizzi, which will be a great matchup. And then Sunday, MVP Shane Bieber against All-Star Jose Barrios, in what should be another fantastic pitching matchup, which I will also be attending. So can't wait for this weekend. Huge series. Really looking forward to being there. Hope to see some of you guys out there at the park. Thank you for listening to just my voice for, oh my God, almost a half hour. I can hardly believe it myself, but Thank you so much for listening to the Dairy Brothers Tribecast with Todd Dairy, Solo Mission, brought to you by waitingfornextyear.com and our friends at the Center for Advanced Dentistry. We'll be back recording Sunday night or Monday morning with our regular open, our regular recording equipment, and Matt will be back to drive the show. So until then, peace.